Deacon Owen was kind enough to give us a wonderful overview of diaconate, sort of a world's eye view of diaconate. But what we have now are three deacons from the diocese who can give us an up-close and personal view of what diaconate means in our diocese. So I'd like to introduce them. On my left, your left, is Deacon Gary McSwain. Deacon Gary and his wife Lillian moved here from California sometime after he was ordained. Deacon Gary is the Director of Deacon Ministry and Life for the Diocese of Boise. He's also the Director of Religious Education and the Pastoral Associate at St. Pius X in Coeur. He's been ordained much longer than he wants me to tell you he's been ordained. But his ministry is vast in many areas, but the responsibilities that his pastor entrusts him with are especially impressive, given his great experience. So, Deacon Gary McSwain. In the middle is Deacon Chuck Skoro. Deacon Chuck is the Director of Campus Ministry at Boise State University, and is a deacon here at this parish at Our Lady of the Rosary. Deacon Chuck was by avocation, was a university professor, but is now retired from that and is working full-time in ministry. And then on his left is Deacon Wence Rodriquez. Deacon Wence is from Idaho Falls. He was an engineer in the working life, but he's now retired. And he was ordained 5 years ago, this coming Saturday. So happy anniversary. All three men have a variety of experience in diaconate, and I think it'll be interesting to hear what they have to say about their experience in Idaho. So the questions they will be addressing are these. What are some of the unique challenges and opportunities facing deacons? What are your hopes and dreams as a deacon? What keeps you going in diaconal ministry? In your opinion, why do you think that recruitment to the permanent diaconate has been so successful in our country? There are over 15,000 permanent deacons in the United States. And finally, in what ways, practically speaking, have you experienced the permanent diaconate as a gift in living your Christian life? So gentlemen, those are your questions, and we'll start with Deacon Gary.
You'll trade me. I had a long list of challenges, but I really would like to focus on the last question first. In what ways have you experienced the permanent diaconate as gift? I celebrated 20 years of ordination this past week. I was ordained in Sacramento, California, and I was still working full-time, still had kids at home. A couple of years after that, I retired from the federal government and worked part-time for the diocese in the tribunal, and part-time in a parish, a very large parish, doing annulments, marriage preparation, baptism preparation. It was very good, it was very exciting, but my wife and I both wanted to work in a smaller parish, a smaller environment, more rural environment. And so I saw in the NCR up here an advertisement at St. Pius Parish where they were looking for a deacon/outreach minister. Let's go up and take a visit. Well, my director down there, the deacon director down there, said, you need to tell the bishop what you're doing. The last thing I want to do is tell my bishop I want to leave. Happened to be Bishop Bill Wiegand, who is of this diocese. And so when I told him, basically one thing he said is, I'm envious. I would like to go back to Idaho. So he gave me his blessings, go up and check it out and see how everything is. We came up here, and within weeks, Father Roger invited us to come up and give it a go. We have been welcomed, encouraged. It has been a true blessing to be in Idaho. I find the deacons' wives treated very differently here than what we found in Sacramento. We've been welcomed from the moment they met us. So part of that is, who do we belong to? I found it real important after being here 3 years and being able to be incarnated to belong to you and to be of service to the people of Idaho. So I chose to do that almost immediately when I could. And Bishop Mike was the one that gave me those incarnation papers. So it's been a joy. But who do we belong to? And that's part of the challenge, is I belong to my wife, I belong to my kids, I belong to 13 grandkids spread out. I belong to the people of God, I belong to the bishop. I belong to my pastor, Father Roger, the people in the parish. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. Who do I belong to at this moment, this day, this time? I belong to all of you. That's a challenge. It's a challenge for my wife, a challenge for me. There are times when she has to remind me, and I thank her for that. So, a lot of challenges. Part of what I remember way back from formation was Father Kenan Osborne was one of our formation people on the weekend. Father Kenan would come numerous times during those 4 years. One of the things he continued to tell us was, it's not about doing anything, it's who you are. He would say, do. It's not about doing anything, it's who we are. And so thank you, Deacon Owen, for again reminding it's not about the business of what we're able to do or not able to do. One of the challenges also, and because I am the director after the guys were ordained, is often it's unmet expectations that cause the problem. The expectations of the pastor, the expectations of the wife, the family. And often we don't sit down and talk about those expectations between the priest, the wife, the deacon. And so when there's heartburn, it's often because we haven't shared those expectations with one another. And the wife has to be a part of that. My wife has been an intimate part of this all the way through. In Sacramento, they were required to be at all the formation sessions over the 4 years. It's interesting enough that there's a diocese in the United States now that separates the wives and deacons during formation, which I find very troubling, as well as others. But our wives needed to be there. It was important for them to be there as part of that. Our wives have to give permission, which she didn't like the word and I don't like the word, permission for me to be ordained or take those separate steps. But I also believe, and I think Deacon Mike shared it there in his video, that we're in this together. I received sacramental graces at the time of ordination. But I'm also convinced that there were graces poured out on her so that we could continue to minister together. Not sacramental graces, I would never suggest that. But graces so that we could minister together and that we could make, and I believe we did together, made a permanent commitment to the church. I think that was a big part of it, that I would step forward and make a visible, permanent step commitment of service to the church. A lot of challenges. I'm blessed. I'm gifted. Thank you for welcoming me 16 years ago. It's been wonderful. So thank you.
I have the microphone, so I guess that means it's my turn.
It's your turn.
There we go. Oh, I'm quick on the uptake here. There was talk about self-emptying service. One of the big challenges for me as a deacon has to be sure that the thing being emptied is me. and not my wife and family, and not my job. Most deacons have are working at a job, have a family, and they're trying to serve as deacons. And the challenge for me is not to be giving away something that is mine. And so I work on balance in my life all the time. The opportunities, along with the challenges, are just amazing to me. One of the things that you get to do if you're a deacon, when you do weddings and when you do funerals, when you do baptisms, not all the time, but some of the time, the reason that the wedding isn't going to be a mass is because they're not both Catholic, or maybe they are Catholic and neither of them much cares about that, but Grandma insisted that they get married in the church. Or if you do a funeral, I remember doing one funeral for a person who had died, and the family vaguely remembered that once, many years ago, they had been Catholic. The family had never been in a Catholic church. They had not a clue what the funeral was. And so what I'm trying to say is that sometimes as a deacon, you have an opportunity to invite people and embrace people whose connection with the church is very, very tenuous or not there at all. And sometimes those are bigger opportunities than the priests have to encounter those people. And that's a wonderful opportunity. It's just really, really something that maybe you wouldn't have if you were serving in some other way. One of the things that I've confronted as a deacon is I deal all day with college students, and it's sort of like having a whole bunch of kids. In some ways it is. I mean, the college students are kind of an interesting phase. Sometimes they are just wonderful, complete adults, and sometimes they are running around like junior high kids. And you never know for sure which is going to happen on a given day. But they're wonderful all the time. But like your own kids, they know exactly who you are. They don't listen very often to what you say, but they are often watching very carefully what you do and especially who you are. And so the challenge that I face every day is that I have to be the person that I talk about and that I preach. And that's a tall order, but that's more important than anything else that I could do in my ministry. And I struggle with that a lot because I'm broken and imperfect in all kinds of ways. And the best that I can hope is that my students will know that I'm giving it a really good try. And sometimes succeeding, but sometimes not. There's a question on here that at first I didn't have any idea how to answer. It's like, why do you think that the recruitment of the permanent diaconate has been so successful in our country? And I think really the answer to that is that God must be calling a lot of people to be deacons. When they first announced that there was going to be a new class of deacons starting, they had stopped for many years after doing a class of deacons here in our diocese, and then they decided, for some reason that I don't know, that they should start doing it again. I just kind of showed up for the meeting without giving it very much thought. It's turned out that when I do discernment, and I've had to do discernment in my life, that sometimes the circuits are just way too messed up in me to be able to hear clearly what God is saying. And so what I do pretty often is in my prayers, I say, tell Rosie, that's my wife. Because she can hear in ways that I can't hear. And the discernment process for becoming a deacon came through her. You know, she came to me, she said, I hate this. You know, I don't like the fact that you're going to be doing a lot more than you've done before, and you haven't done a good job of balancing your life so far. But she said that the message is clear in my prayer, that you're called to be a deacon, and I'll support you because what else could I do? And so it isn't even correct to say that we discerned it together. I asked God to tell Rosie, Rosie told me. But the great gift to me is that is that in becoming the person that I'm called to be, because I have to work on being, not just talking about it. I know that I have to become the person that God calls me to be in the context of the diaconate. And that's wonderfully affirming to me. It's really great to be doing something that I know that God calls me to, and growing into the person that I know that God calls me to be. He gives me that space to do it. The greatest joy that I have as a deacon is to sit there on the altar platform during Mass, because everybody else is staring this direction, I'm staring the other direction. The greatest joy is to stare into the faces of the people in the congregation. They don't have any idea how beautiful they are. Not a clue. They don't have any idea what a hole it leaves on a Sunday when they didn't come to Mass. And when I say I didn't see you on Sunday, the response is always, oh, I feel real bad about that, it's a guilt trip, as if I were putting a guilt trip on them. It isn't that. It's that it was such a big hole left when they weren't there, because people don't have a clue how important they are and how they hold up the whole community. And it's such a gift as a deacon sitting there and looking into those beautiful faces. I just can't tell you how wonderful it is. I'm going to pass it along so I don't cry or something.
I don't know how I'm going to keep from crying, because ever since Deacon Owens talked, I thought, wow, this is overwhelming, and it's going to be visible, serving God visibly, and it's still emptying himself. But what keeps me going in the diaconate, in about 25 years ago, I started the formation process. And I got up to the point of being called to candidacy and being ordained. Those were the last two steps. And when it came to call to candidacy, there was 4 of us that were studying together from our parish, and only 1 answered that call. I put it off for 20 years. One other one put it off for about 10. And he was ordained, but not ordained in this diocese. However, during that period where I was not part of the diaconate community per se, because all the aspirants were invited to participate in the retreats and the campouts each year. So I got to know a lot of the people that were ordained during that period, and they kept encouraging me, kept calling me back slowly, and I kept not necessarily listening or putting it off. There were things that were happening. We had eight children in two groups, one of 3, and then 10 years later, started another group of 5. And so we were right in the middle of those 5 when I was going through this process. And so we decided that it would be a time, to finish raising family, at least through most of it. But I kept being encouraged by this diaconate community that existed. They would see me now and then. I wasn't participating in any of the activities that were going on. They were there. And finally, when it came towards retirement age, my wife was working at the parish office, and she got asked if if she would take on a higher position in religious education. And we decided that, yeah, it was time for me to retire. I would help her in her ministry at that time. And so for a couple of years, I would help her. And then Father Joe says, "You want to reconsider?" Prayed about it. We both prayed about it. And it came out, yes. I wrote my letter to the bishop. And he handed it to the person that was in charge of formation. He said, 20 years, and you've been away 20 years. Why don't you go read all the documents that have come out from the Vatican and from the bishops in that time. Wow, you know how many documents have been produced in 20 years? But we narrowed it down. But it was just the community continuously encouraging me. The people of Idaho encouraging me. We came from Iowa to Minnesota in 64. We were here in Idaho for the first time. We spent 3 years in Idaho Falls, and we said we liked this area, we're going to come back. We were going to come back after retirement. It happened sooner than that. And so my whole 37 years of being in Idaho Falls, the second time, has been where people have been helping me. I don't know that I have served in that capacity that people have served me, but I can see in the ministries, confirmation classes, great to see people back in church. Yes, Deacon Chuck said, you miss them when they're not there. We have 6 masses on the weekend. And so we rotate through the masses, and so you get to know the different people, and they are such a blessing to me. That's what keeps me going. Challenges, yeah, how can you get people to continue to serve God? Just call them out. One of the things that in the video was that we, as deacons, have a great opportunity to be in the community. 2 sets of ears, 2 sets of eyes are better than one. Our wives are there, and they're better listeners than men. Deacon Cummings said yesterday, men don't listen very well. Women do. And so we get that input. We are able to see where the opportunities are and where people are asking, hey, I need help in these areas. And that's where how a deaconess is called to serve. They are a couple, husband, wife, together. They raised a family, and now together they work to serve the church. And it can't be done alone. It has to be done with the wife.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that all 3 men, I neglected to mention all their wives, and so I'm glad that they did. My wife is here. We are in this together, and so that's only fair. Gary's wife Lillian is home at our house babysitting our dogs today. Rosie, Chuck's wife, is pastoral associate here at Our Lady of the Rosary, and she's sitting in the back of the room. Joe Rodriguez was over here somewhere. Raise a hand. There you are. She's in the back as well. When people enter formation for the Diocese of Boise, I tell them early and often that unless the formation process is bringing them closer to Jesus, that it's a waste of time. They should get out of it. And so I guess one of my questions for the three of you is sort of that last question on the sheet. What in your experience of the permanent diaconate helps you to live your Christian life? In what ways has being a deacon helped you to grow closer to Jesus?
One of the faculties that we're given by the bishop is to be able to preach. And that has been a great gift in that I have to reflect on who I am before I can talk to others. How is God working in my life? What is He seeing in me that needs to change? What is the Spirit telling me that I have to do or change to become that which He created me to be? And so that gives me that opportunity to spend time with God and to spend time with the Spirit and see what it is that He calls me to. Because what He's calling me to is probably what He's calling others to also. To follow Him more closely. To be open to His Spirit. And how can I talk about that if I haven't tried to do something there myself? That's spending time with Scriptures, spending time with prayer. That's what it's done for me to live out my Christian life.
I wouldn't have anything to add to that. That's good.
It is the journey with the people of God. I can't say it's hierarchical church. I can't say it's organizational church. It's walking the journey with the people of God. When I can share with folks my age what they're going through with their son who has AIDS, that brings me closer to God. When I walk the journey with the people in RCIA, the young Army veteran that just came back, we had him in baptism prep as we baptize his son here in a couple of weeks, and we'll be godparents for his son. As I walked that journey and I talked to him about his experience in Iraq, brings me closer to God. It's my journey with the people. Somebody mentioned yesterday about, when they fall down, we pick them up, and when I fall down, they pick me up. That brings me closer to God. So is my journey, can I separate being a Christian, being a deacon, being a DRE? No, I can't. It's my walk with the journey with the people of God. One more thing I would like to add, and one of those questions which I didn't. The success of the recruitment of the permanent diaconate. Two things. One is I just attended the Diaconate Directors Convention back in New York a month ago. Our bishops, our leaders of our church are extremely encouraging and affirming of the permanent diaconate. And I think it's because of them, our Conference of Bishops, that it is very successful in the United States. The other thing on a local level, I believe our recruitment is good in this diocese, but especially I think it takes the invitation of our priests, of our pastors. I know in our particular parish, when we wrote those letters, it was successful. The guys were humbled, their wives were humbled. But some of them have stepped forward and said, yes, I'll at least explore that journey. So it takes that personal invitation and encouragement, both on the part of our bishops, our priests, our pastors.
Can I say something? Sure. There was one thing I wanted to share. When they announced that they were going to have a new class of deacons, back when I was doing this, I went to a meeting, and I think it was out at Nazareth. And I don't know why I remember the number, but there were 51 of us there. And I almost got up and walked out, because I looked around the room, and I said, I don't have anything in common with any of these guys here. And, well, it just wasn't convenient to do that, because I would have to crawl over a bunch of people, and it wouldn't make sense. So I sat there for another couple of minutes, and then it occurred to me, none of these guys have anything in common with any of these guys here. There was very, very different people. And one of the things that I learned that day is that whoever God is calling to the diaconate, he's calling lots of different kinds of people. And so I think sometimes I've talked to men who say, I'm thinking that maybe I'm called to the diaconate, but boy, I'm sure not very much like you. And I say, boy, congratulations. That's an achievement right there. And that God is calling all kinds of different kinds of people. And so if you don't seem to have much in common with the other people who are deacons, that might be a clue right there that maybe we're missing something. Look at our priests, they don't have anything in common with each other at all. What a disparate group of guys. Well, they do. I mean, I'm overstating the case. They have their call and they have a kind of holiness, but they're very different men.
So, I'm going to invite questions from you in a second, but I do want to recognize a few other people. There are a few people here who are in the current formation class, current formation program. So if you are a member of the deacon formation program right now, if you would stand so I know you're here. Just by chance, we have 4 classes in process right now, and one man from each class is here. So I don't know how they arranged that, but that was pretty good. In this diocese, we form deacons and lay ministers together side by side to try to avoid some of the competition and some of the rivalries that Deacon Owen referred to in his talk. So there are also several people here who are forming as lay ministers for the diocese. And if you would stand. Just for information sake, there will be 9 men, God willing, will be ordained to the diaconate for this diocese on October 27th this year at the cathedral. So keep them in your prayers between now and then especially. So questions from you for them. Comments as well. Comments are also welcome. She's my shill, really.
You were talking earlier just about, and I've seen it myself, with misunderstandings, especially among people in the pews. So can you talk to that at all? I mean, as far as what people think a deacon is or what a deacon does, have you had any of those experiences yourselves?
It really depends on the parish. Depends on the guidance of the pastor. I recall when Priest River was going to get a deacon as a PLD a few years ago, Richard Ham. And some of the folks came from Priest River down with us, and they said, what can we expect the wife to do? Ooh. Sometimes it's tougher on our wives than it is us, you know, because there's expectations put on them. And of course that's covered in formation too, so they're somewhat prepared for that. Well, it really, I think it was John Carpenter asked yesterday, the perfect deacon. It depends on the parish. It really does. Not all of us have the same gifts or talents. And sometimes deacons are not able, or I shouldn't say able. They don't have the time to go do some of the things they would like to do. I would like to be able to spend more time in works of charity and justice. However, some see that I have a gift of administration. So I am asked to spend a lot of time with the parish, doing administrations and budgets and things like that. Is what I'd necessarily like to do? No. I have the gift to do it, I've been asked to do it, and so I willingly do that. So I don't know that I have an answer of what we're expected to do in a parish. Every place is different. Some pastors have us preach regularly, some pastors do not, and that's okay. It's okay. So, maybe you guys have a different or better answer.
I have. People are always surprised that I do anything.
I was just thinking, this last week we were, wife and I took a week off to celebrate our anniversary, you know. And I only got 3 phone calls. We said, don't call us. But it was somehow people got our phone number, our cell phone number, and were calling. And so people do expect the deacon to be available to them. Sometimes I think they find it easier to talk to them about things or do things, you know. Hey, you were one of us once, or you understand because you have a wife, instead of calling the priest. So there are those type of expectations and acceptance of who you are. There's other people in our parish that would not have anything to do with the deacon. They, if the priests are gone, how come the priests are gone? You know, why? What can you do for me if I go to the hospital? What can you do for me, you know, if I need to talk to someone? So you get both. But some of those are coming around.
Is there anything else?
Just one thing I'd like to add is that sometimes it's very helpful to share our lives with other people in reality. You know, that my 4 kids aren't and weren't perfect. That they were hyperactive and we struggled with that. And we had a whole bunch of kids in high school at the same time. And we survived it. And we took in foster kids at the same time. So to share our lives, that we aren't any better than they are. We walk the same journey, we're searching for the same thing, and if we can help build the kingdom of God together, and we're in it together, then I think it's real helpful to people that we share our real life stories. Not necessarily in public, but appropriately when we're visiting with people and they share their struggles, that we have them too, and we're in this together.
Yeah, I had just one request and then a question. I'd like to request of our pastors who have deacons that you strongly consider working out a formal memorandum of agreement with deacons. I'm told that there are some of our priests who have said, only when I have a memorandum of agreement with my bishop am I willing to then go on record with the deacons. And I guess I want to understand that. At the same time, with the number of opportunities that, based upon the charisms of individuals, that deacons have to serve, it's awkward if we don't have an understanding of what you expect of us in terms of the variety of things that we can do. Because at the end of that year, it would be great to sit down with you and say, how are we doing? And our former pastor, whom I love enormously, Father Joe Schmidt, and have tremendous respect for, had said to me, if there's a problem, I'll let you know. And I, at least from one person, would like sometimes to know that there isn't a problem. Or if there is, here's what it is and how we can address it. So that's a request that I, as a deacon, have. And then I'd like to present to our panel, as deacons and husbands of wives of deacons, how have you managed to address the challenges of children, family, and grandchildren, especially when our weekends are often consumed and there's this expectation that, as my kids are now saying, but we want you to be grandpa.
It's a blessing to have these children and grandchildren. I just have to share with you how painful it is when they aren't part of the church. And just somehow, one who I thought was very churched, and all the rest of it, last week just said, you know, the church doesn't feed me anymore, doesn't offer me anything anymore. And so I'm searching around, but it's meaningless for me. So they went to church with us at the cathedral in Sacramento, and it pained him to be there. And it pains me. And so I just asked the church, how can we reach out to these young folks, our kids, our grandkids, and make our faith, our church, more meaningful to them?
Well, the question that George asked was about how do you sort of balance all the things you need to balance. And the answer in my case is very poorly. And it's for me, it's a struggle every day, and I get it wrong most of the time. I wish I had balance in my life. I really wish I did.
One of the great opportunities that I have as a deacon is that I have a wife that tells me, hey, you need to learn to say no. You need to learn to say no. Every now and then, don't take on something else. Give something up. It is a burden on the family. When we have birthday parties for the grandkids, the kids call, what's your schedule like? When are you available? Are you available on Saturday or on Sunday at any time? And we pretty well have worked out that part of it. Okay, we can come at 2 on Saturday, or we can come after 1 o'clock Mass on Sunday. So they understand and they accept that we are busy on weekends, but they work during the week, so they're busy during the week. One of the things that I failed to mention on what keeps you going is that I've had priests that have just been very supportive of. We have two pastors in Idaho Falls, and as often as we can. We scheduled it for the first Wednesday of the month to go out to lunch. And so we can exchange what it is you expect of me, and here's what we don't understand about what you're asking us to do. The priests in this diocese have been very supportive. I've been taught by many, have seen many go through Idaho Falls, and all of them have been very supportive.
Continue to bless your children and grandchildren. Not too long ago, our grandson, who I happened to be the first one to hold him when he was born, left on I thought was a very foolish trip to go to Houston and do some foolish work and all the rest of it. And he's been not the best driver, and the police know him well, and all sorts of other things. But you know what? I gave him my blessing. My door is open. I'll answer the phone. We're there for him. You know, he was an altar server and all that. You know, is he doing what I'd like him to do right now? No, but he's my grandson. I still love him. I still bless him. I still encourage him. So no matter what they're doing, living together with their girlfriend, give them your blessing. Welcome them, encourage them, love them.
One of the tricks, of course, is balance, and our wives are key to that balance. So one of the things I want to do before we get too much farther is have all those currently ordained to the diaconate and their wives. Some wives are here without their husbands. If those people would stand.
I just have a comment on what my experience has been sharing my life in the ministry as a priest with deacons. I know I met a number of you personally, and with some of you I worked very closely, beginning in Twin Falls. Now I remember Deacon Harriet from there, Deacon John, both Jones, the one that is here and the other one, where's he? I can remember their last names very good. With their wives. In Lewiston, I have two deacons, Deacon Fred and his wife Karen Schmidt. Deacon Fred is Father Joe's brother. And they are beautiful, they are holy. And then it's Deacon Chris and his wife Angela. And every time I spend time with them, it's like being at home right there. I don't feel like I'm a stranger, and I can see them as basically even my own parents at times, since they are advanced in years, some of them. But, you know, the example and the gift of their lives for the church encourages me. It really strengthens my own call to love, as I see their love for each other and their love for the church. So I'm very grateful to all the permanent deacons in our diocese and in Hispanic communities. I know the Hispanics may not be able and readily to accept deacons because we don't have deacons in Latin America and we don't see them that often, so we have more priests. And therefore, you know, they do much of the work, but the permanent deacons are not very visible. So when they see a permanent deacon wanting to do a wedding or a quinceañera or a baptism, of course they say, no, I want a priest. And it's just a matter of time for them to come to realize that this is the reality here sometimes. But thank you for your witness of love and the witness to love in the heart of the church. Thank you very much.
I know there are others with their hands up, but my wife had her hand up, and I'm sorry.
has to go home with me tonight. So, well, you know, you can tell from the men on our panel, and my husband, that they are men of care. And so they kind of beat themselves up over this whole balance issue. And if I start crying, that's just how I am. So, excuse that. But there are many men who have families always struggle with balance. It can be careers, it can be golf. You know, so I would rather have a man who was struggling with balance in his life, giving himself away to the people of God and his family and his career. And these men do. And they make hard decisions. And many times they choose, and I can say for all the deacons that I know here, they choose their families first. And that tears a part of their heart because they like to give it to the church. We had a wedding last August, and the people in formation were having special rights. But of course, our son picked that day to be married. And so we were at his wedding. And I said to Richard, this is the best way we can teach these men and women that your family comes first, is because, of course, we had to be at the wedding. So, yes, you struggle with balance, but you do a great job. I like your priorities. And I doubt if there's any deacon's wife here who would argue with me. Sometimes you're not perfect, but that's okay. Let me speak for your kids. Do my kids have problems with the church? Yes. Does their generation have problems with the church? Yes. But when they look at their fathers, they are proud. They are so proud of the choices you make and how you give yourself away. And you are one of the reasons that they believe in the church, that they keep looking at the church with hope, because they see you and they think this is a church that loves and cares and gives itself away. So there is something there for me. So you are assigned to them. I can remember, and then I'll shut up. That